It is bestlifeonline.com/cow jokes. You ready?
What would you, what do I need to be ready for?
No, I'm just going to read you some jokes.
Okay.
What did one dairy cow say to the other?
What?
Got milk.
That's great.
Why can't the bankrupt cowboy complain?
Why?
He got no beef.
Okay. Give me another one.
Okay. What do you call a young cow that drinks too much coffee?
What?
Over-caffeinated.
Where's the joke?
Over-caffeinated.
Oh, great. Awesome. All right.
Why can't cows wear shoes?
Why can't cows wear shoes?
Because they lack toes.
Oh, that's cute. That's a good one.
Anyway, moving on to the rest of the video.
Yeah, awesome. Just good.
Hello.
Hi,
and
everybody.
welcome to another day of history class with Sam and Logan. Logan, I thought I'd update you. I was going to do this off the air, but I remembered as soon as I hit record. That makes it sound like this is fake, but it's real. Mrs. Temple showed me some videos of students doing our first day experiment with the ice cubes. So we have
Oh, really?
yeah, we have students dropping ice onto their kitchen tables and having it shatter.
That's great. That's exactly what we were talking about with glaciers.
Yeah. So we've got that. We've got people setting them and just watching them melt, which will mimic the movement of the glaciers. But people are really
more accurate.
having some fun with this, and I thought you'd appreciate that.
So, okay, awesome. That's great news. Thanks, kids. I'm glad you're enjoying the videos and doing what we tell you to do. So
yeah, we've got some power here. So we will have another assignment at the end of this video.
We absolutely will.
Yeah, Mrs. Temple's only request is that we tell her in the future when we have prompts for her students to do, so then she understands when students are sending her videos of ice. We forgot to mention that we had that included in the video, but that's a lot of fun, and I'm glad to see that they're having fun with it too.
Yeah, me too. That's great.
So those glaciers are why we have rivers. Now, Logan, remind me why rivers are important. What were the things that you mentioned a few videos ago?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a couple reasons why rivers are important, especially when it comes to having a town near them, like Northfield is. One thing you can do on a river is you can move through it on a boat, or you can swim, but most of the time you're going to be boating.
Do not swim in rivers, kids.
Yeah, well, so stick to the boats or the canoes, things like that.
Also, probably don't do that. Just stay out of rivers.
Right, unless you're someone living in the 1850s transporting things, but I don't think anyone watching this video falls into that category.
That's right. I just want to make clear that we're not telling the third graders to go in rivers either to swim or in a boat.
That's
unless
true.
You're with an adult and wearing a life jacket.
Yes, great points. So, but those are things you can do in a river. And when you're in a town, you need to be able to bring pigs and wood and sacks of flour and that kind of thing up and down the river to get it to other people so they can pay you for them. And I mentioned that one of those things you can transport up and down a river is flour or lumber. And both of those things are materials that get crafted in mills.
Yes.
Mills are buildings that will often be put alongside a river because they have. I don't happen to have a water wheel with me right now, but so visualize a building. A building. Do you have a water wheel there?
I was trying to see if I have anything around that. I've got something.
Okay. Sam's going to help us demonstrate what a mill does. I'm very excited. Maybe I have no idea.
So this is a coaster. This is a Mickey Mouse coaster.
Perfect. That'll do it. Okay, so imagine this is a building, and that's right. So Sam's hand is a building, and that building is called a mill. And what's attached to the side of the mill there is that round device called a water wheel. And what happens is that large wheel is partially in the water. That's perfect. And as the water moves, it pushes the wheel. And as the wheel moves, the motion of the wheel there, that's right, provides energy for the building that can be used to crush up wheat and make it into flour, or turn lumber, wood into sawdust, or things like that. And it's a really convenient way to begin a town's economic output, make some jobs, put some stuff out there for people to buy. So that's an introduction to mills for you. And so they're pretty common in this area, aren't they, Sam?
Yeah, they're pretty cool. Mills bring the power of the rivers and use them to make things. Usually mills, will the power from the rivers will be used to crush things or to help carve out lumber. This would be an early version of what we would call a factory. That would come up more and more because, like we said a few episodes ago, they did not have much in the way of harnessed electricity at the time, so they had to use power by other means. Once they did get more electricity, and once they had more inventions during what we call the Industrial Revolution, that is when there was an explosion of inventions, which led to things like cars and factories being more common, and really brought us into what we would recognize as the modern day. Before all that, the best way to make things and produce products would be largely part of what mills do. And so that was what a lot of the business in the early days of Northfield was, is through these mills.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in fact, that if you kids have ever been in Bridge Square, we talked about Bridge Square before, that area downtown, right in the center of the downtown area, where you can get all your cheese curds and corn dogs and deep fried Oreos during Defeat of Jesse James days. There's that big white building on the other side of the river you might have seen. In the winter, there's a lit up Christmas tree at the top of this building. That is one of the first mills that was built in Northfield. Originally, there was a mill right in Bridge Square and the one across the river, but now there's just the one across the river. But that one is an original. It's a very old building. We'll talk more about old buildings later, but that's an example of a mill that's still around today. It's still used for multi-mill.
Absolutely. And talking about one of their old buildings that we have in Northfield, there are a lot of them. And old buildings can seem, not that interesting, kind of just boring old pieces of brick and lumber that are just still around. But when you can understand the human side of it, when you can understand the full lives that happened here, they're a great way to connect us to our past and understand more and more about our community. For example, Logan, can you hit me with some of the old buildings in Northfield that you remember that some of these kids might recognize, maybe even in the Bridge Square area?
Ooh, the Bridge Square area. That is, well, you can't ever go wrong with a building that's actually, it's very easy to miss. Very simple, very small, and yet it played an incredibly important role in early Northfield. It was called the Lyceum Building. It was home to the Lyceum Society. Lyceum, what a wacky word, right? Lyceum, what's going on there? Are they eating lice or something? That's gross. That's not what's going on in the Lyceum Society. Lyceum is actually, it's a Greek word. It describes essentially, it's from ancient Greece. It's actually it's a debating society essentially that the ancient philosopher and very smart dude Aristotle had, or one of the Greek guys had, probably Aristotle, but that doesn't really matter. The point is, the Lyceum Society was where people would come together.
Poetics.
Yeah, a book by Aristotle. So people like Aristotle in ancient Greece would get together. They didn't have TV, they didn't have video games, so they would get together and they would debate ideas. And that is the same thing that the people in early Northfield wanted to do. So they had this Lyceum Society in this tiny little wooden building. And they came together, everyone who was there would come into this building, and they would talk about the big issues of the day. So we're talking about things like we talked about slavery in another episode, and they had a debate about slavery. We talked about women's rights in another episode. They debated women's rights. And we didn't mention this, but they had a debate about dancing, about whether it was okay for young people to dance, which is apparently one of the hot issues of the time. And they came out in favor of dancing, which is great for them. It's also a place where they would sing together. They would sing hymns and songs. They would host groups of singers, speakers, and it was also where the first Northfield Library was. So it's a very important little building. If you want to find it today, it's a tiny little white wooden building right across the street from the Domino's near Bridge Square. Maybe Sam has a
picture. There's a picture of it in your books. And yeah, there should be a way to find it. Logan, I do want to know what is your stance on dancing?
Everyone other than me is allowed to dance.
My stance. Well, that's actually not what I meant. I meant, what is your stance for dancing? What's your starting move?
Oh, right. It's called the Zam. I don't know if I don't. It's called the Zam.
That's my name.
Nice. Yeah. No. That your name is Sam. This is called the Zam. It's a complicated move. It's got a deep history. It's really cool. And now the question is whether I'm going to do it. And I will. How about we do it at the end so that the kids have something to stick around for?
Okay. So at the end of the video, Logan will do a Zam with a Z, with a Z.
Zam. Z-A-M.
Zam. Okay. Well, you know who might have been at the Lyceum Society and would have been debating things like zamming was the namesake of another building that we have downtown, and that is Hiram Scriver.
Tell me about this guy. He sounds cool.
He came to Northfield, and he was a young man. He was 26. He was actually born in Canada, lived in New York, and he came along as one of the early settlers of the Northfield area. And he would eventually actually become the first mayor. So once Northfield became a town, they needed to start having, people help run the community, and he was one of those people. He experienced a lot in his life, and there's a lot to learn about him. He started off having a company, and he actually had a store that was right on Bridge Square. It's an old building made of an old brick, and it had some arches on it. It was actually built. There were materials that had what was that, Logan? They had salt in it. What was that?
It was a limestone sandstone building. Yeah. One of those things. There's essentially, they're versions of the same thing. I'm sure it's in your books, the specific geology of it. It must be limestone. You can't build a building out of sandstone. Anyways, but limestone has big salt deposits in it, and it tastes great. Once again, I don't want to be misconstrued here. First of all, do not go swimming in rivers without a parent, and please do not go licking the Scriver building.
Especially not right now.
Parent with you, especially not right now. But cows did not hear my advice, nor did they want to listen to it. Would I have given it to them?
Cows. So, cows?
There were a lot of cows. You might have heard about them. They're 1/3 of our special name. Northfield, a land of cows, colleges, and contentment. There were a lot of cows walking around Northfield at this time. And there weren't any, it was a free range era, essentially. Cows were just walking around. No one was fencing them in for a variety of reasons. But essentially, the cows weren't really fenced in. And so cows would just walk up and down Bridge Square, and they'd see this nice building full of salt, because the cows were roaming around and tasting some of their nice tasty salt. A bunch of them kept on licking and licking and licking and licking into the building until they found themselves stuck underneath the building, and they started mooing very loudly, and it woke them to get out there and try to figure out how to get the cows out from underneath this building. Just a classic story from the good old days of Northfield history. But that's the Scriver building.
Yeah, I know. Under the steps of my house, we just have little voles, small rodents that have tunneled around our yard. But I don't think we've ever had anything as large as cows get stuck under our house.
Yeah, that'd be hard to not notice. Yeah.
Yeah, Logan, have you ever had any animals stuck or burrowed into your buildings?
Just my little brother.
Ba-dum-bum.
Yep.
The Scriver building was not most famous, actually, for its cow licking history.
Really, what else happened there?
It is actually best known for being the home to the First National Bank back in 1876, when it was robbed or attempted to be robbed by the James Younger Gang. And that is when the Northfield citizens stood up and defeated Jesse James, which is where we get the name for that festival that we have in Bridge Square in front of the Scriver building every year, Defeat of Jesse James Days. So we will talk more about that bank raid in later episodes, but now we know why that building is where it is. That is Hiram Scriver. Speaking of the First National Bank, one of the people who came together to start the First National Bank in the Scriver building was a man named John C. Nutting. John C. Nutting was part of the first group to come together to start the First National Bank, and it was also its first president. And they started just 4 years. 4 years before it got robbed, because they started in 1872. Yes.
That's right. That would be 4 years, yeah.
Yeah. I think some of the third graders watching this could have done that mental math faster than I did. But I encourage you all to get more confidence in your mental math ability.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, John Nutting.
More about this guy.
Yeah. John Nutting was part of the group that came together to start the First National Bank. And he, too, likes having historic buildings. One building was the Nutting House, which at the time was the largest building in Northfield. And they really liked it like that. They specifically designed his mansion so that it would be bigger than every other building in town.
That's really cool.
Yes. Well, it was really cool. But then a church came along. And you know churches, they like to have these tall things called spires. They're essentially these big...
Yeah, right on the top of the church, yeah.
Yeah.
That normally makes a church pretty tall.
Yeah. In fact, it made this particular church taller than the Nutting Mansion.
How did Nutting react?
They decided to... the Nutting family decided to make the house taller. They added a sky parlor, another level of the house, so that it would be larger than the church that was built in town. So that is a family and a house that continued to be part of Northfield's history. That house was then home to Carleton College's president over the years. So it was very very important for the history of Northfield. And then I think the last old building that we'll talk about is another one downtown, which is actually next to another building named after Nutting. That would be the Nutting Block, if I'm remembering correctly. Right next to it is another thing, which I will let Logan transition to in a better way.
Well, it's called the Archer House, I believe is to what you are referring. Indeed. And if you've seen it around downtown, it is the huge, it's probably the biggest building downtown, right? Maybe
let's call it
the biggest building downtown. It's very big. The Archer House. It's that It's used today as hotels. It's where a smokehouse is. It's home to a variety of small restaurants and stores. But for a long time, it has served an important role in Northfield.
It's this
It's
big red and white building. It's got a little porch in front of
I
it.
think it's blue now. They painted it. Did it used to be blue and now it's red, or was it used to be red and now it's blue?
Unless they've painted it in the last few weeks, I'm pretty sure it's red.
Well, maybe it's kind of a reddish blue. Uh,
Purple?
Anyways, it's that giant building, very pretty building right on the river. Trying to see. Yeah, it looks like it could be a kind of a reddish red,
It
right
could be
across the library.
described as red.
Okay, good. Uh, well, it is where most people coming into Northfield would stop in and stay the night. They wanted to be close to the downtown for a long time. So travelers coming through, businessmen coming through, maybe even a few famous people coming through Northfield. And maybe Sam knows something about at
That's
least
right.
one of the famous people who stopped by. Maybe even has a little show and tell item for us.
I unfortunately don't think I have a show and tell item for this one, but to who Logan is referring would be Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain,
Mark Twain. Oh my gosh, the famous author.
the famous author. So the stories of Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, or the memoirs of President Ulysses S. Grant, all written, or at least the memoirs in part, by Mark Twain. He is one of those folks that would travel around the country giving different speeches, giving talks. So if he was either talking to a group like the Lyceum in Northfield or perhaps to Carleton or St. Olaf College, he would have stopped by the Archer House and given his presentation. And it would be very common for folks coming to speak at either of those colleges to stay at the Archer House. So if you're going there for lunch one day, hopefully in the near future, or if you're just stopping by the Archer House to visit someone who's coming to Northfield for a little bit, you can really appreciate just how many people have briefly stayed there, who have passed through those halls to stay here in Northfield, because it's been home to hundreds of people over the years, and it really is an impressive place. And there are stories like that all across downtown. In every building, whether it's just a few years old or it's nearly 2 centuries old, you can really appreciate the lives that were lived in these buildings, and it can connect you to history in a much more personal way than simply looking and saying, "Oh, that's an old building." So I would encourage you, next time maybe you're with your parents on a drive, or if you guys decide to walk around your neighborhood, try to figure out in a respectful way what the oldest house is in your neighborhood. It might be it might be an interesting idea to do that, and maybe try to imagine what those lives could have been depending on how old they are. Maybe you live in an old house yourself. Maybe your parents might know how old your house is, and you can figure out uh, you know generally the most that people would live in a house could be 10 or 20 years. How many people could have lived in your house in that time? um, if you live in a newer house, maybe you can imagine the generations of people that can call that place their home in the future.
Yeah, the other thing that you could do too is if you look in your book and you see those pictures, uh, why not head into downtown and see some of those buildings today as well? Go see the Lyceum Society, go see the Archer House, go see the Scriver Building as you're walking around downtown, and do all the things that Sam said.
Yeah,
So,
and if
oh no, you've got something important to say. It looks like.
and if your parents are on board for that field trip, that is something that you guys can do safely. You can stay at a distance from everyone. But if they're not, there's always your good friend Google Maps. If you go to, what is that street called in Northfield?
Division Street.
Division Street. If you just go on Division Street in Northfield, I was thinking Faribault. Faribault is Central Avenue. Um, Division Street in Northfield, you can check out those buildings virtually as well. Let us know what you find.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Now, speaking of finding things, Are we ready to show these kids they've persevered through this video? They've made it to the end. Are we ready to let people experience the beauty of the ZAM?
I don't know. I think there needs to be a vote on this little Lyceum group we have here. Since I called this meeting to order. I am the president of this Lyceum. I get 2 votes. Logan, as the only other member here, you get 1.
What?
These are the rules. So who here would vote against Logan doing the ZAM? Who here is in favor of Logan doing the ZAM?
Oh my
Wow,
God!
it's
Great. Wow, it's a unanimous vote.
unanimous. I packed the courts and I didn't even need it.
Yeah, I know. Just in case, it's always good to take precautions like that.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway,
Logan,
yeah.
ZAM away for posterity.
So it's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple move. There are two. There's 2 major. I'm not sure how I'm going to get the angle on this right, but there's 2 major steps to a perfect ZAM. And the first step is this: you just stand. You just stand like this, and then as you're standing, you just wait for the right moment, and watch this carefully. And you say ZAM, and you just do this. Just it's hard to get everything in here, but the main bit is this. It's kind of a this kind of motion. You just say ZAM, and that's the move, and that's it. That's the whole thing, really.
Well, that is not a very effective dance unless it's put to music.
Well, yeah, sure. You have mental music too.
Oh, sure.
Anyway, well, now we've really educated these kids, and I think I'm ready to send them off into the wild blue yonder.
Yeah. Well, kids, here's another assignment. If you have time, this is for fake extra credit only. We do not have the authority to give out extra credit. But if you wanted, you could figure out a song that you like, play a little snippet of it, and try out the ZAM. Let us know what you think of this great new dance move. And remember, Logan Ledman taught it to you. All right. I think that's all for today. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for coming to class.
Good luck out there, kids.